Welcome, one and all, to episode 100 of Midweek News for November 7th, 2024. Let's get started. First up, Veeam is testing support for another VMware competitor, Nutanix. It seems that since Broadcom purchased VMware, Veeam has seen the need to diversify their support. They already have various levels of support for Proxmox. They're also working on a prototype for supporting XCP-ng. The next edition is Nutanix. Things are definitely getting interesting in the virtualization backup space. Firefox 32 is now available. Support for blocking third-party cookie access with enhanced tracking protection strict mode. Experimental support for tab grouping, which needs to be enabled in about:config. You would set the browser.tabs.groups.enabled item to true. Keep in mind this is very experimental at this stage. Copy without site tracking has also been improved. Firefox 132 also removes the HTTP2 push due to compatibility issues with various websites. Check the release notes for further details. macOS Sequoia 15.1 is now available. This release is notable because it's the first point release in the 15 series, which means I will now consider upgrading my Mac Mini to the new OS. Most of the features in this release are of little use to me specifically, but focus around Apple Intelligence and an upgrade to iPhone mirroring top the list. If you're on a MacBook, the battery menu gains a low power mode toggle. There are various other improvements in this release, but they rely on the user living in the Apple ecosystem completely. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I bounce between platforms too much to do that. Gnome 48 has a release date. You heard that correctly. Hot on the heels of Ubuntu 24.10 and Fedora 41 being released with Gnome 47, the team has already scheduled a date of March 19th, 2025 for launching Gnome 48. It's too early to talk about new features, but they do include a timeline which pegs a beta release for February 1st, a release candidate for March 1st, and again, the full release on March 19th. The Fediverse is gaining a TikTok competitor called Loops. Still in the early stages, Loops is not yet open sourced, nor has it completed integration with ActivityPub, the protocol that powers Mastodon, PixelFed, PeerTube, and others. Loops is accepting signups on the new platform, just don't expect too much quite yet. At some point in the future, it should be possible for people with other Fediverse accounts to use them to connect with Loops without creating a separate account. How to install Syncthing on Debian 12. The fine people over at How2Forge have unleashed upon its audience an article covering how to install Syncthing on Debian 12. If you're using Debian 12 and are relatively new to Linux, this is a great project to get you a little deeper than just using the graphical front end for the package manager. Syncthing is a nice utility that will allow you to sync files between different computers on your network. It also works on all major platforms, Linux, macOS, Windows, and many of the BSD variants. OnlyOffice 8.2 is now available. If you're looking for an alternative to Microsoft Office but don't want to use LibreOffice, OnlyOffice might be the solution for you. This is a free and open source Office suite available for Linux, macOS, and Windows. Some highlights of the 8.2 version include faster launch times, signatures in PDF forms, improved touchscreen support, new tab styling settings, and more, which you can find out in the article or on the OnlyOffice website. 9 reasons to learn Linux. A few highlights from the article are security, cost of maintenance and installation, reviving old computers, and no privacy invasion. You will have to read the article to go deeper into their list, but they raise some good points and a few questionable ones. Shotcut 24.10 video editor released with AI-powered speech-to-text. Besides the AI feature, this release includes the latest FFmpeg 7.1 and improves GPS text and reframe video filters. Shotcut is definitely getting better with each release and has a few tricks that some commercial software has yet to add. I'm talking to you, Telestream. You can grab your copy from the official website. Shotcut remains fully open source and runs on Linux, macOS, and Windows. It is worth noting that the latest universal binary for macOS is only labeled for versions up to 14. Your mileage may vary. The Tuxedo computer folks have launched Tuxedo OS4. They're at it again with their KDE-centric Tuxedo OS4 powered by Linux Kernel 6.11. This release also includes the latest versions of the NVIDIA drivers and Firefox 132. Built for Tuxedo laptops, Tuxedo OS4 can also be used on your existing hardware. This release is notable as it's the last with a version number. Tuxedo Computers has decided to use a hybrid release model that combines elements of rolling and point releases moving forward. It will be interesting to see how this decision works for them long term. Linux use on Microsoft Azure now crosses 60%. Just remember, folks, Microsoft loves Linux as long as it makes them piles of money. They reported that Alma Linux has become an endorsed Linux distribution in Azure. This is an interesting read and not a terribly surprising milestone. Dropbox announces new round of layoffs, cutting 20% of its workforce. If you're a heavy Dropbox user, this might not be the news you wanted to hear. The layoff impacts 528 employees and is the third round of layoffs in recent years. The CEO claims that this decision was part of a broader restructuring aimed at increasing operational efficiency. Dropbox users will want to keep an eye on the company and maybe look into other options as part of a backup and business continuity plan. The Linux directory structure explained. This article is aimed at Windows users migrating to a Linux platform. It explains at a high level the directory structure and how it works, and what types of files you might find in each of the directories that are included by default. It even covers on some historical directories that are no longer used for their original function. This article is great for new users or more experienced users that might want to have a reference to keep around for later use. Take a look, you might just learn something. TrueNAS Scale 24.10 shifts from Kubernetes to Docker. Electric Eel, as the new version is called, brings many new features and improvements to storage enthusiasts. The big change this time around is moving from Kubernetes to Docker. It will be interesting to see how this works out and if other NAS products like OpenMedia Vault will follow the change TrueNAS has made. TrueNAS 24.10 also includes the new True Cloud Backup feature, which gives users an option to back up to IX Cloud. You'll definitely want to check out the release announcement on the TrueNAS site to get the full list of details. Linus Torvalds lands a 2.6 performance improvement with a minor Linux kernel patch. The patch was written by none other than father of Linux, Linus Torvalds, and is based on an earlier patch proposed by developer Josh Poimboof. Excuse me for the bad pronunciation of his name, I probably butchered it. The intent is on avoiding the use of the barrier no spec function within the 64-bit copy from user function. Regardless of the underlying details, I think any user would be happy with a 2.6% performance increase. This update should land in the 6.12 kernel. Apple has acquired photo app Pixelmator. The app has been available for iOS, iPadOS, and macOS since 2007. This may be Apple's way of getting a photo editor that is of more professional grade. Only time will tell. Windows 10 support ends in October 2025. Here are some options. Of course, Microsoft wants everybody to just upgrade to Windows 11. It will, however, make an additional year of support available for individuals for the low price of just $30. Unlike business users, which can get up to 2 additional years of support, individuals are limited to a single year. Honestly, if you still have a functioning Windows 10 machine and the need to stay on Windows for some reason, plan your budget for the new machine while you've got time. Then you can always use your old Windows 10 machine to experiment with Linux for years to come and be assured that you will have security updates on that platform. Gnome OS to become a general-purpose Linux distro? It seems that this has been a discussion lately and has been officially proposed. It does make sense, since the KDE project also intends to develop and release KDE Linux. Traditionally, Gnome OS has been a testing ground primarily for developers to test and showcase the latest features. It will be interesting to see if these desktop-centric distributions become the gold standard for their respective desktop environments. KDE Linux for KDE Plasma, GNOME Linux for GNOME, and Pop! OS for Cosmic Desktop. I will say, as a Linux vet of more than 25 years, things are starting to get interesting again. Etckeeper. Back up your Etsy files to Git for safekeeping. This is an interesting option for keeping your Etsy directory safe from your own mistakes or potentially bad actors. The article walks through the installation of Etckeeper on Debian, Fedora, and Arch-based systems. A nice utility with a great intended purpose. Now that I'm starting to experiment with Git once again, I might have to do a full demo of this backup solution. Linux enemy Daryl McBride dies and nobody notices. Daryl McBride was CEO of SCO, which was famous for trying to bring an end to Linux by way of a huge lawsuit against IBM, Daimler Chrysler, Novell, and other corporations. The underlying claim was that Linux was filled with code taken from SCO's proprietary versions of Linux. McBride passed away on September 16th. Mr. McBride was 64 and had battled ALS for a number of years. I'll try not to say anything bad about the guy, but I'm not at all sad and didn't even notice that he had passed. Zed, a Rust-based open source code editor. Born from the ashes of the defunct Atom, we now have Zed, and contrary to what Bruce Willis said in Pulp Fiction, Zed is far from dead. Programmed primarily in Rust, Zed Editor comes from Zed Industries and uses 3 different licenses for distribution. The editor code is available under GPL 3.0, the server-side components are AGPL 3.0, and the GPUI, the user interface framework, is under the Apache License 2.0. Zed offers a cross-platform application, optional AI functions, real-time collaboration, and more. This is definitely an editor worth checking out, especially if you're getting a little tired of VS Codium style editors. Alright, my friends, that is going to bring us to the end of episode 100. We've finally made it into the triple digits. Thank you all for your continued support. And hey, if you know somebody that watches this news show every week and hasn't subscribed, give them a little nudge. Only about 10% of my viewers are actually subscribed to the channel. It doesn't cost anything and it doesn't hurt, so help a guy out. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you next time.